County Board is in session. Welcome to our April 18 Saturday board meeting. This will be a short meeting. I think as many people know, we lost our friend and colleague, Eric Gutschall, Thursday to brain cancer. So we'd like to start off our meeting this morning with each of us sharing a few thoughts about Eric. And I'd like to start with Mr. DeFerranti. Matt?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Eric was a committed leader and wonderful person, kind, funny, honest, focus on community, and always committed to the greater good. Three thoughts stand out for me this morning. First, from his swearing-in speech, he spoke so passionately about the GLUP, the General Land Use Plan, and the map that we use. And he said it exemplified the collaborative leadership that he loved about Arlington. I think it takes a pretty special person to talk about the GLUP and make it sound visionary, and Eric was that person. Second, our debate on whether to consider additional broadband capacity in the form of 5G. One opponent of moving forward spoke very passionately about her health and safety concerns. Late in a board meeting, we took the vote, and then Eric immediately walked out to find her in the hallway and spoke with her for several minutes, making sure that her concerns were heard and wanting to make sure that we did all we could and can to address her concerns. He was deeply kind and compassionate. And then third, he had a wise and funny way of saying things that I really loved. When I first heard him, his refrain was he was focused on the future. Later, he encouraged us all to level up. And perhaps most of all, he said the word sweetie with a voice that sounded way more Southern and deeply good than almost anything I've ever heard. Like so many of you, I will miss Eric very much. He was a brother and mentor, and I will always be grateful for the opportunity to have known him and worked with him. I'd ask that we hold Eric's wife, Renee, and his daughters in our hearts and do all we can to support them. And I'd ask that we keep Eric with us as we grieve together and work through this pandemic together. Eric led by asking the most important questions and encouraging us all to reach for the best in ourselves. I know that's what he would want us to do in this difficult moment. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Crystal.
So this board often, I think, engages in the activity of recognizing a community member that we've lost. This is not how it's supposed to go. Generally, that recognition is of a community member, hopefully in their 80s or even 90s, that we have the opportunity to share on behalf of a grateful community some thoughts to their adult grandchildren. And for that reason, that's really colored everything I might want to share about Eric today. I think, for example, one of the greatest legacies of his time on the board is his passion and vision for joint facilities planning. And I think about, for the first couple years that I spent on the board, trying to push that boulder up a hill of getting the Joint Facilities Advisory Commission started with Jay Fizzette and Barbara Cannon and James Lander on the school board. And then when Eric came on in 2018, he didn't just take over that boulder and lift it up, but he made that whole idea soar. I was so compelled by what he envisioned for a long-range facilities plan for this community. And that enthusiasm and gratitude is colored by the fact that though we will all do our best to take on that work, he had more work left to do. And I think that about colors what we could have to say today. And that's why this is so much harder to recognize a community member who left an incredible legacy, but had a lot more legacy to give, and who probably should be the fifth box in this virtual meeting in this strange time. I think if I'm ready to conclude anything after reflecting over the past couple of days, it's how much Eric believed and lived his life by the maxim that a small group of people can change the world. He believed so deeply in the power of neighbors, in the power of civic associations, in the power of small groups of people, And he believed that everyone in this community, every single one of us, should shape not only our own destiny, but that of Arlington County. And I am carrying that with me every day for the rest of my service, and I hope the rest of my life. Eric will be missed tremendously, and I appreciate this opportunity with my colleagues to recognize him. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Crystal. Mr. Dorsey.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Katie and Matt, for sharing your reflections about Eric and what he meant to this board and what he meant to each of you. We all knew the man, but we knew him in uniquely different ways, and that in many ways is special for us to come together and share those this morning. At the start of this year, just a few months ago, we unanimously selected Eric to serve as our vice chair. And you probably, like me, then presumed that this year would take on a certain arc where he would, as so often as had been done before, he would develop his skills and refine his vision throughout the year so that come next January, he would move one seat over to the right and become the chief elected official of Arlington. And here we are, and I can't really fully absorb that in a little bit more than 3 months since that moment, we've gone from having Eric fall seriously ill to now being gone. And as a board colleague, Eric was obviously an important member of our team. His content knowledge, his vision, his experience, his willingness to learn and grow, among other qualities, made him an exceptional board member. And while I was happy to have him as a colleague, make no doubt, I was also really proud that Eric was representing me, my family, in this community. So losing Eric as a colleague is going to sting for quite a while. But as I reflect this morning in this moment, just a couple of days after his death, what hurts more, and really achingly so for me, is the loss of a man who embodied so much about what can be good with humanity. Monthly, Eric and I would meet for our check-ins, and I know he did that with everybody. And ours would take on the tone of taking a walk around the community, weather permitting. And we would change up our routes from month to month, but while we spent some time discussing the topical issues before the board, we would also, as was Eric's wont, comment on buildings and land use and decisions that were made and observing what worked and what didn't, and really having a conversation about the recent history of Arlington and Arlington's future within the context of our built environment. These were some fascinating conversations that I will always relish. But we also spend significant time discussing our families. And the two of us shared some commonalities despite our obvious differences. As men of about the same age, we shared a deep connection to our mothers growing up. And we also had similar circumstances and hopes, fears, difficulties, and rewards being husbands and fathers to children born as daughters. It was our bond as girl dads that gave me insight into Eric as a man, and quite frankly, a deep and abiding admiration. He relished raising Ava, Marlena, and Lindy, now known as Adam, to be good people, ethical, equitable, and fulfilled. We didn't obsess about their academic achievement or their extracurricular activities. We talked about ways to enrich their experience so that they could be those good people who could lead the next generation in positive and important ways. And that's something that we don't see enough of in our community. People who are not so concerned about their role as a CEO of a company or as an elected official, but who really, really leaned in to their responsibilities as a husband and a father. And I will miss having a friend who I could share those joys and those challenges with. And I will miss him being a part of our community who can show others that very important side of human fulfillment. This is going to hurt us for quite a long time, but what hurts most of all are that Renee and Ava, Marlena, and Adam have lost their dad. And we need to do everything that we can to support them in the way in which Eric so lovingly and clearly provided a model and example for. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian. So clearly, Eric was a friend to us all. That happens when you've got a small team of 5 people. We all came to Eric a different way. He and I had a rough start, as my colleagues know. We didn't really know each other when he decided he was going to run against me for the Democratic primary in 2016, and it was not the nicest of campaigns. I had some indications then, though, that the tone of his campaign was really not so much about Eric, but more about some people who were advising him. And of course, I won that race, so I was, not too hard. I didn't really bear a grudge when Eric joined the board in 2017. And I think I'd say we were cautiously friendly at first. I think that's how we both knew we needed to make this work. And I think we were both kind of surprised when we realized how much we agreed on things, a lot of things. And of course, as we all know, Eric had a rather infectious sense of humor, and he never took himself too seriously. And in fact, he was downright charming. I found myself, to my surprise, gradually getting to actually like Eric, and I like to hope that I like to think that he got to like me as well. We had some, I think, as probably with all of us, some pretty serious conversations about life and death, and raising teenage daughters. Mr. Dorsey, if you want some help from the female side of you, I've raised a couple of them myself. So now I'm into grandchildren. And I watched, as we all did, Eric grow into being a really strong board member. We had that, of course, baptism by fire, really, which was the bringing of Amazon's HQ to here. And I think we all bonded a lot that way. And it became very clear to me that Eric was one of these elected officials who just loves local government. And he loved Arlington. And yes, he would get into the details. He was my go-to guy. When I wanted to figure out how permitting really was working and how it really played out, I would talk to Eric. And he was becoming such a partner. I was really, really happy when he became my vice chair this year, as I think we all were, excited about what we were going to be able to do together, excited about I figured he would be a really great board chair when in the next year. So for whatever reason, God had other plans. So that's all not to be. And Arlington has lost a great public servant. We have lost a friend and colleague, and his family have lost a wonderful husband and father. So here we are. In the coming days, we will all be consulting about how best to remember Eric's life and honor his life. We'll be consulting with Renee to do that. I know many people in the community want to share their thoughts about Eric, and our staff as well. This whole organization is grieving. So we'll get on with our meeting in just a moment. But for right now, I'd like to just have another minute of silence to remember Eric a little bit again. Thank you. All right, thank you, everybody. We will get on with our meeting. The only action we are planning to take today is a resolution to defer this meeting on April 18 to our meeting the following Saturday, which is April 25th. We are doing this because our currently under Code of Virginia, we cannot conduct regular business. It has to be emergency business virtually. But the legislature is meeting this Thursday, the 22nd, and to adopt the governor's budget, there's some amendments in there, and we believe they will be adopting an amendment that will allow this board and others and our other groups to meet and conduct some regular business so we can keep life going during this pandemic and not have to gather physically and actually endanger everybody's health. So that would be a good thing. So we've decided to defer our meeting. So I do have one resolution that's been very carefully prepared by our council. I will not read all of the whereases. I'm sure they will be posted online. And we'll get to just the therefores, and I will make this a motion, take a second, and then see if my colleagues have any comments they'd like to make. I'll do a little whereas. Whereas the county board finds that the governor's proposed amendments are a helpful clarification and confirmation of the authority of the county board and other public bodies have to transact business during the COVID-19 emergency. Therefore, we resolve that the county board of Arlington, Virginia, hereby continues the April 18, 2020 county board meeting. And we defer all items on the agenda, including public comment and all items on the consent agenda and the regular hearing items, and all items on the April 21st, 2020 County Board recessed meeting agenda to Saturday, April 25th, 2020 for the consent agenda and regular hearing items, as well as public comment, and to Tuesday, April 28th, 2020 for the recessed meeting agenda. And be it further resolved that the County Board hereby recesses the April 18, 2020 meeting until the meeting is reconvened on the aforesaid deferral date of April 25th, 2020. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Crystal. Colleagues, would anyone like to make a comment, ask a question of our council? Never have I sound so legalistic as with this resolution. Any thoughts or comments you'd like to add?
Madam Chair, just one comment, which is that I want to thank my colleagues, and particularly you, Madam Chair, in making this decision. I think that in times of crisis, as leaders, we want to show that we are resolute. And this is a really unusual and possibly unprecedented crisis in which we are showing leadership by staying home, which is not the position I think any of us would have expected ourselves to be in. But to do so, I think, shows respect for the sacrifices of our community members who are staying home, sometimes at considerable economic loss, and shows respect and helps protect those who do have to be out. I know this wasn't an easy decision or a simple one. I'm optimistic the General Assembly will vote to enable us to do our full business next week. And I really appreciate your willingness to do this, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Well, I thank the whole team here for supporting all of us in trying to figure this out. I don't do this alone at all, and we have to appreciate our staff for what they've done to kind of make this work. Thank you. Any other comments, Mr. DeFranti? Anything
Just
you'd like to add?
I think Kate, Ms. Crystal said it well. A big thank you to you for this resolution. Fully support.
Thank you, Mr. Dorsey.
No, Madam Chair.
All right. Well, I thank you all. We really are making this up as we go, and it's a great team. Thank you. Thank you to our staff, kind of unseen in this board meeting, but they've been supporting us and they make it all happen. And believe me, the work behind the scenes is not simple these days. So thank you all very much. I need to call for a vote. All in favor of the resolution, please say aye, and I'll go clockwise around my screen. Mr. Dorsey.
Aye.
Ms. Crystal.
Aye.
Mr. DeFranti.
Aye.
Ms. Garvey. Aye. All right. Motion passes 4-0. If Eric were here, he'd say aye too. Thank you very much. We are adjourned. Thank you all.